everybody, and welcome to Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Today, I have a very special guest on Attendance Bias. Elisa Allechant, the newest DJ on SiriusXM's PhishRadio, is joining me today to speak about Phish's show from November 2nd, 2018 at the MGM Grand Arena. This show is part of the 2018 Halloween run when Phish covered the legendary Kasvot Vakst album, I Rock. At least I was fooled that they were covering Kasvot Vakst. Throughout today's discussion, Elisa and I discuss Mike's use of resonance, how this show is a throwback to 1999, and a pretty interesting theory about Gaiute from a guy named Stardog. I hope you're out there listening, Stardog. So let's join in with Elisa Allechant for November 2nd, 2018 at the MGM Grand Arena. Elisa, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you stopping by on Attendance Bias. How you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm stoked to be here.
My pleasure. And I'm very excited to talk about today's show. I had never been to Las Vegas for Phish, and some of the highlights that the show had that I listened to and pointed out, there's some of the best that I've heard in years. And I've listened to Phish for decades now, but hearing certain songs really just blew my mind. So I just want to start off by saying thank you for picking a relatively recent show that can really even take me back in that feeling of surprise and discovery.
It felt like an old show. That was one of the things I really liked about it. It was like, hey, I'm 25 again.
Well, hopefully we all feel that way again, right? That's what they do best. They're a time machine. But before we get into Phish or Las Vegas, I wanted to ask a little bit about you so we can get some context into who we're talking to and who we're listening to. Where did you grow up?
I'm from Glens Falls, New York. I was born in the Glens Falls Hospital. That's the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains, but most fans know it as Halloween 94. So I grew up there, but my first show was SPAC, 7/10/94. So that's kind of, I consider SPAC, the Knickerbocker, and the Civic Center all my hometown venues. But I live now on the West Coast. I'm a Sacramento girl now.
Oh, so I get the feeling that on the West Coast, that Phish isn't as big culturally as it is on the East Coast. And I'm saying that as an ignorant East Coaster, that I've only lived in the state of New York my entire life. And I've been on Long Island for most of it. I was surrounded by first Deadheads and then Phish heads. Whenever I speak to someone who is from, I would say west of Colorado, like, generally Arizona and California, that they don't have as big a crowd generally on a person-to-person basis. Is that a misconception, or have you found that to be the case?
I think that's true in a lot of aspects, especially, 20 years ago, it was way more that way. But there is less Phish fans out here, but there certainly is a lot of rabid Phish fans out here. There's a lot of us who really love the band. And many of us came out here because we really like the venues out here. I like seeing Phish anywhere. And of course, Madison Square Garden is the crown jewel, but the Gorge and Shoreline and the Bill Graham, and I could just go on, Chula Vista, the Coors Amphitheater, terrible name, fantastic venue. So I love it out here.
I agree with you venue-wise, because one of the blessings that 3.0 has granted us, and myself personally, when they came back, it was my first full year as a teacher, and in 2009. And I had a summer paycheck, I had a summer vacation, and Phish was back. So the two of those things combined, it was just, we got to travel. So starting that year, I went to those 4 Red Rocks shows in 2009, and I was blown away by that venue. In 2010, I went to the Greek, the 3 shows at Berkeley, which, yeah.
I love the Greek. I forgot to say that one. That happens to be one of my very favorite. I saw Mike play with Bill there, and I've seen lots of other shows. Ani DeFranco. I've seen his Holy List, the Dalai Lama there. Like, I just love that place.
Yeah, and the sound quality just took my breath away for those shows. It was beautiful. And then in 2016, I went to the Gorge, and Bill Graham, my girlfriend, is from San Francisco.
I was at those shows too.
But I agree with you. The West Coast, and I would say just west of Colorado generally, which I guess for Phish fans is, quote, the West Coast, right? it just has such a variety of venues, whereas the East Coast is mostly sheds and arenas, with exceptions. But it's really an adventure to go out there and to see Phish.
Yeah, it's why I moved out here. I'd always known I wanted to move to California. I wanted to come out here and become a massage therapist and live the whole California vibe. And I had this out of body experience at the Nick during Prince Caspian. It was like the first time I had floor seats at the Nick. And I just lifted up out of my body and watched the energy wave go through the audience and hit the band, and then the band just roll it back to the audience. And I was like, oh damn, I gotta follow this wave and like feel where it goes. And that's kind of how I ended up out here.
It's the greatest feeling in the world, isn't it?
The best feeling in the world, as Keller would say.
I had that feeling at my first show, and I kind of had no idea what was going on. I had limited knowledge of the band's catalog, but this was December 29th, 1997 at Madison Square Garden. And during Run Like an Antelope, it closed the first set, and it just kept roiling and peaking and peaking. And I was behind the stage. I had seats in the 400s behind the stage, and you could just see the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, every time.
And
they say there's no bad Phish. Like it's like pizza, you know, like there's some, it's always great. And sometimes it's fucking spectacular.
And there were a few times during the show that you chose that I felt it. I've been walking around a lot during this quarantine. I take my dog on walks every day, and I listen to a lot of Phish, no surprise. And there were times during this show that you chose that I almost had to stop walking. Like I didn't realize what color the traffic light was. I just had to, because I was having an out of mind experience. And I can't wait to get to it. But I want to ask you, you said your first show was at Saratoga in 94 in the summer?
Yep, 7/10/94. It's back. I heard them first in 93 with actually, I was at a college party, even though I wasn't in college yet. And I met some people who had been to the Union College show in like 92, I believe, down in Albany. And their mind was blown, and they had tapes. And I didn't know the Grateful Dead back then. My parents were like total straight-laced conservative Christians. And so they had no like out there music. So when I heard this, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. This blows my mind. The first song I heard was Contact, and it just would not leave my brain. So I went to the record store back when there were record stores, and I said, there's this song, and it goes, the tires are the things. And the dude was like, all right, that's Phish. That seems like you, Elisa. Like here's the album. And I listened to Junta on replay on my little CD player like all year, and then went to the show that summer. And it was the first show I'd ever been to, like any concert that I'd been to with just by myself without parents.
Let's talk about 2018 when this show took place. So in 2018, Phish only played 39 shows, so a relatively light touring year, even for 3.0. They had a summer tour and a fall tour, and the fall tour closed with the 4-night Halloween run of today's show is the third of 4. They wrapped up their year with the traditional 4-show round at MSG. And I looked at the touring map, and it's pretty notable that out of 39 shows, only 2 of them were not multi-night runs. And
well, yeah, because at Madison Square Garden, they really realized, like, you know, the thing that's hard on fans and hard on the band and hard on the crew is going all over the place. Like, we don't need to do that. We can stay somewhere for a few nights and settle in and rest our old bones.
All of our old bones, yeah.
Yes.
But it just hit me, and that's one of the things I love about Phish is they're so dense. I continually find new things to think about and love. And one thing was looking at this touring schedule is when you think about more mainstream acts and you look at their touring schedules, they try to hit as many cities as many times as possible. And Phish, it's almost the opposite, where they can hit only a few cities, but have several shows throughout a tour. It's just very interesting to me compared
That's because other artists play the same show over and over again, right? You go to see New Kids on the Block, that was my first show or second show. That's the same show that goes to, so they're just trying to, they're trying to fit in as many as they can with that one show and make the money that they need to make off of the show. But with Phish, it's different because the fans will come and see 4 shows in one, because you never know what's going to happen at any given night.
How many shows did you see on this tour? Do you remember, or just overall in the year?
It was just these 4. That year that was the year so my first real professional job as the director of operations at a cannabis manufacturing facility. I started off working as their as like a marketing assistant, and I just got really into like how cannabis got manufactured and standard operating procedures. And turns out I'm a total nerd for that kind of stuff. So it was my first big job, and I didn't really get to spend a lot of time going to see Phish like I would have wanted to. So, but with webcasts, it made it so easy. Like we moved into this great new house that had surround sound, and I totally was able to set it up like never before. So I didn't go to any shows but those 4 in Vegas. But I had Curveball tickets. Thankfully, I sold them though. I sold them like a month beforehand. Very because fortunate. I was so busy. I know, it was crazy. I feel so bad for everyone that got curveballed. That was nothing compared to this year, though.
It's funny, though, that you say that you only went to these 4 shows in 2018, because myself, for different reasons, but I was, quote unquote, taking it easy for Phish in 2018. It was kind of an off year for me. I always just go to as many as possible. But in 2018, I had a lot going on. I was looking to sell my house. I had a previously scheduled vacation that summer. I was also kind of in financial questionable status. So the only shows I had tickets for were Merriweather Post, the 2 shows they played that summer, and Curveball. And,
did you end up going?
One of those.
Were you on your way there?
I was set up for camp. I was there with my friends. We had just set up camp. We went in all together to make sure that we could camp near each other. And myself and 2 of my friends who came all the way from Charlotte went to go get lunch. They had a little like juice bar set up next to I can't remember exactly, but there was a little juice bar next to a piano that was just out there, like a stand-up piano. We were so happy. We each got our smoothies. We were just so happy to see each other. It had been years. We were so excited to be there, good vibes. And we got back to the campsite. Everyone was sitting, and my friend John looked at us and said, "Yo, it's canceled." And it didn't process. We're like, wait, no, what's canceled? It couldn't even be. Yeah. And he said a cop had just come by to all different campsites and informed everyone that the whole festival was canceled. And we were scrolling Twitter looking for some official word. And it was just moments. And we were just like...
Okay. Was the bunny on? Like, were they talking about it on the bunny? Oh.
Yeah, it was... Oh. And the weirdest thing was you could tell, because we got up and walked around, like we had nowhere to go anyway. We had all planned to be there for a weekend, right? It was like an end of the year party, end of the world party.
One of my girlfriends did a whole bunch of Facebook Lives. Like she was bummed, and she did a lot of Facebook Lives on there. And I'm so sorry, honey.
But it bears notice that 2018, Curveball may be the headline, but they had a tremendously positive year. There were major highlights in this year, including the Casvot Voxed Halloween gag that was part of this run that we're going to talk about today. And I have to admit, they got me with the gag. They got everybody. Who would have guessed they would have made up a band and covered that band? Yeah, And I'm on the East Coast, so by the time it starts, it's already like 9:30. By the time the playbill, the Phish bill, gets announced. So that's another advantage of the West Coast is we go to bed at reasonable hours after the webcast. I know. My girlfriend is from San Francisco, and when we're ever out there, watching baseball games that start at 4 p.m, compared to a night game here, which is just miserable. And although everything closes at 2 a.m. out here, like it's the weirdest thing. You come from New York where the bar closes at 4, you got to be out of there by 5. But if you know somebody, you really can just wait until 6 when it opens again. That doesn't happen out here. That's for another podcast. But there's that. There's also the Halloween shows. There's also the New Year's run, which was outstanding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were just on fire when they came out of 2017.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about what it's like to see Phish in Las Vegas, because I've been to the city, but never for a Phish show.
So it's different. When the first time I went to see Phish in Vegas, it was at the Thomas and Mack. So everybody's at a different hotel. I mean, we were close. We were at the Hard Rock back then, but everybody's at a different hotel. And then you have to wait outside to get in. God, I remember in 99 when we waited outside to get in, like I was afraid people were going to pass out. We were crushing each other so hard and it was so hot. But then, so that's a different experience. Oh, also in that night, that was back when everybody was using walkie-talkies. So you could walk up and down the strip and just change to whatever channel and hear a bunch of Phish heads on their walkie-talkies. And occasionally you'd get a normie and they would be like, what the hell is happening on these? That was really fun. But with MGM, everyone's pretty much in the same hotel. Some people are at different ones here and there, but even then you're often like not far on the tram. So everyone kind of comes from the same place, goes back out in the same place. So we take over the hotel rather than the town.
How does Las Vegas handle the Phish crowd?
It's a big city, of course. So there's lots of places you can dissipate to, but because Phish fans are distinctive, and maybe there's more diversity in New York City. So you don't, when we blend in more, but in Vegas, Phish fans aren't your normal Vegas kind of first like thing. So, I've seen string cheese there too. And every time that I go to a jam band to see Phish, that's, it's a relatively large one, there's always at least one group of frat guy looking people or women who are on a bachelorette party who will stop and say, is this a hippie convention? Like, what the hell is going on here? So there is that. Like, we do stand out more in Vegas than I think we do in a lot of towns that are that large but more diverse.
All right. So looking at this show, the first two songs were Cavern and Beauty of My Dreams. And right away, I could tell there was something a little bit extra in the band. There was a little bit
when
more.
Does the show open with Cavern, right? Like, aha, Cavern, oh my God, this show's going to be a rager.
I looked it up on Phish.net and I didn't write down the statistics. I'm kicking myself right now. But after 1991 or 1992, there is just a tiny handful of times when Cavern opened a show. It usually is a first set closer or an encore. Mm-hmm. And so right away when it opens, it seems like there's something a little off in a good way. This is my favorite stuff. Because I'm big on sensing patterns and like I'm such a stat nerd. So when something is an outlier, it catches my attention immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not a stats person. I'm a feelings person. Like it's the feeling of the music for me. But the feeling, like I knew it hadn't been that's just not a common thing. And so I was like, oh man, this show is going to go off. And it did.
Yeah, it sure did. And then Beauty in My Dreams was beautiful. It was upbeat. I love the revival of Phish Bluegrass in 3.0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the third song really caught my attention. When they played If I Could, I might have, while I was walking my dog, I might have said out loud, oh. I might have really, when you talk about being a feelings person, If I Could really reaches into that spot for me.
So what I really appreciated, so this show is very 1999 revisited, but I'm a vocalist. So I appreciate when the band enunciates because for many years, the vocals, other than when they were really trying to harmonize, they weren't paying attention to a lot of the vocals. And in this particular show, and in a lot of the ones lately, it stands out that they're all trying to enunciate, to hit the notes, to really listen to each other sing and like I can understand the words in the song so much better in all of these than you can in a lot of other years. So I really appreciate that. And I've noticed it's been a trend for the past 3 or 4 years that they're all working hard around their vocals.
And it's very clear, and If I Could, especially, and my thought to that is Well, the original version, the baseline version, has Alison Krauss on vocals. And if you're going to try and not quite emulate Alison Krauss, but play the song with that in mind, you better enunciate. That's a pretty tall order.
Yeah.
But Paige's harmonies are absolutely stunning in this.
If I could, I would, but I don't know how. If I could, I would, but I don't know how. If I could, I would, and I'll take you now. Hear you laughing as we go. Take you now, flipping backwards through the doors and through the windows. I'm melting into nothing.
It's so seldom played that it's a really big treat to hear it for me. And the thing that kept going for me was there's such a delicate build toward the end. And Trey is playing at his, I don't know, his most thoughtful. Even Fishman has some cymbal bell things going on.
Yeah, I just love that tune so much. Like you can really feel the love that comes out of it. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about Phish ballads is that it's universal love, and it can point at your friends, your lovers, your family. It's universal, and I just love that. I eat that up.
And then after If I Could was Way.
That's when you could tell it's 99. Oh my God, it's 99.
Yeah. And the little tip that I had in Cavern, I'm like, oh, this is a little unusual. And then If I Could, it built a little. And I'm like, this is a rarity. And then Way, I'm like, all right, now we're in for it. Like now
so
it's
Mike's
something serious.
really using, I love how Mike uses the sound in the venue to like, he already speaks deep, or he already sings deeply. Mm-hmm. But he uses the vibrato inside the arena to accentuate the deep feeling of his voice is a spectacular way. I love it.
Like, at what point are you thinking? I mean, I'm not asking you to sing, and I know you like doing it, but like, can you think of which part you're talking about?
Any part, like, I'd like to take your head off. He just echoes it down. Like, he can tell that it's really booming. And so you can, I remember you could see it in his face that he was like, yeah, this is working out really well.
With the next couple of songs, I feel like the set really elevated for people who love the big jams. What were your impressions of either Sand or Get Back on the Train?
So Sand always blows my mind because people talk about Phish is not a political band. And I would agree with that, other than Fishman's loving of the burn, which, yay.
He feels the burn.
He feels the burn, so do I. The Sand is a message. It's like an awakening. So it isn't necessarily saying political, but it really is a message to us fans. There are certain songs that Phish does. A lot of them are fun, but some of them are activation music, in my opinion, that are telling us who, we tend to be a more privileged, a higher educated group of people. And so every once in a while, there's a song that Phish will play for us that says, you need to pay attention. You need to take this outside of this venue. And there's work in this world that needs to be done. So I've always felt that way with them since the mid 90s. Like very early on, I caught the fact that like the vibrational shift that's happening in this planet, it's accompanied by music. And Phish is part of that, of like, hey, we're super fun and we're also super real. So
they're a full-on, meant to be taken seriously band. You talk about activation songs, and Crowd Control is, I think, the most direct one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More actually is the one that I think is the biggest activation one. But Sand is one of the earliest ones in my opinion of like, I mean, obviously a lot of the Gamehenge stuff is really in that vein. And that's what made me realize once I'd heard the Gamehenge music and the whole lore, I was like, oh my God, he's totally into it.
Trey recites the first two verses in this version, almost like spoken poetry. He doesn't quite sing it. Mm-hmm. And it was just a little detail, but it's something that makes you sit up and pay notice.
If you gave me all the symptoms, but not affect the cause, it's quite a bit like trying to heal a gunshot wound with gauze. If you instead attempt to wrest the pistol from the hand, then I would not be able to equate my life with sand. Embracing all your siblings for the tongue. Slide and let the silicone grace you as you fall. Bounce and land and let your brothers crush you to the ball.
He was telling us.
Yeah, and not singing.
I noticed that the past couple of years, Sand has been like the Sand in Mexico. At the last one we got, it was very like, this is a point we're trying to make and show you guys. Like, here it is. So, I mean, obviously I can't read their minds. I have no idea what they're really thinking, but that's what it feels like.
And that's to say nothing of the musical quality of this performance. I just
love Mike smacking the bass. That's just, horns and the bass. Those are my favorite parts of Phish. And we don't get horns very often, so.
No, you got to, Halloween shows are probably your best bet, or New Year's.
That's why I like Tab too.
But in the middle of the Sand, there was a part at about 7 minutes or so, and again at 8 minutes, where it was like Hendrix Machine Gun type playing, like really harsh, in a good way, harsh, like really just shocking us, and straight up guitar psychedelia that reached a really big peak. It finished very strong. My first thought was, wow, that was impressive. And then Get Back on the Train also had a very similar build. During Get Back on the Train, you could hear the band really sit back in the pockets and just let the rhythm chug along. And then Paige and Trey especially are going to build and build, while Mike and Phish just kind of add their flares. And before you know it, we're at the top of a volcano.
Yeah, totally. That's a good way to put it. I loved how like the audience is singing along. I like how that's happened more and more recently, that like the audience is like taking over and doing some of the singing. And so the whole place is just shaking with everyone's vocal. It's awesome.
It's infectious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
they're like taking that music up through the heart chakra and right out the voice. It's just amazing. I love it.
it really impressed me that their patience, they just stayed on it and built and added a piece and stayed on that and then built and added a piece. And it went to I think it's about 9 minutes long. By minute 6, like you're just at a roiling peak, like tantric sex kind of as a Phish jam. It's just constantly at that top. And again, it builds, I even wrote these words, building layers until they reach an incredible, satisfying climax.
That's one of the things I love about Phish.
I was completely unaware until just now that that's what I meant. And then Martian Monster comes in, a Halloween callback, right? Because we're at Vegas for Halloween anyway. And there was a part toward the end, I don't know if you noticed this, where each band member kind of dropped out in turn while another band member took over, and they just kind of did this round robin. It reminded me of You Enjoy Myself right before they do the bass and drums trampoline part. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I kind of, after you pointed that out in some of the pre-notes I saw, that I totally listened to it again and was like, yeah, you're right. It does kind of go back and forth like that. So yeah, it's just, I just love listening to them experiment that way and let each other come out, like, oh, I'll step back. I mean, that's what I love about the jazz part of Phish, is that's really what they do. That's what makes a jam band is like being able to step back and let the other person have their solo and let them take it for a while. And they're really good about it, especially now, all these years older, they've taken so much ego out of it.
The next song blew my mind a billion ways from Sunday. I almost want to stop the podcast and just play it for people and let it speak for itself. Yeah, Mercury really did it for me. Do you remember your reaction in real time at this? I understand if not.
I mean, I don't exactly remember, but I do remember being like, I don't think I've ever heard this tune before.
Yeah.
And we hadn't. Was that the first time?
Because I think they played it at Merriweather Post the previous summer. That summer, I'm sorry, summer 2018. This will be part of my fact check. I'll look it up. But I don't think that was the debut.
Okay. Yeah, because I just remember like sad, the kind of sadness that's in this tune.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, and at the time, my boss was actually he had, cannabis business is difficult, and before cannabis became fully legal, there was some gray areas, and so my boss was working through some legal issues, and I found out right before this show that he actually had been taken to jail.
Oh wow.
So like some of these songs really stuck out to me too, because it was like, wow, he's going to be real lonely in there.
Usually when you go to Vegas, you're the one in jail, right? Calling others.
It just totally blew my mind. I was like, man, I'm so glad I'm in Vegas and not back in Sacramento.
Yeah, no kidding. And listening to it now, these lyrics are really resonant. Your day is longer than your year. For anybody working from home, or anyone stuck in this routine, and the days that are met with loneliness, aid and abet is loneliness, since we're quarantined, and if we're good about it, not interacting with too many other people. It was just another one of I have to stop and listen to this on my walks lately, where these lyrics just spoke right to me.
I mean, even the essential workers are facing a lot of loneliness, right? Because you can't hang out with your coworkers after work and bitch about your job. You can't we just can't connect in the same way. So everyone's really experiencing that loneliness.
It took me a little while to come around on Mercury. It was hard for me to wrap my mind around it because it's so many parts. It was hard for me to see it as one cohesive song. But this version and New Year's that year really went a long way for it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mentioned 1999 earlier, where they had these half-hour tweezers that would go from movement to movement. And Mercury, this version is very much like that. It's 24 minutes long. And I even wrote down, dies a little bit and then moves on to something else about 4 times. I wrote that. Like at 12 and a half minutes, at 13 minutes, 15 and 17. They really know. They are experts at how to build you up, cut you off, and then start all over again.
Mm-hmm. Early on, like in 96 or 97, I had a friend who was a music major and said, Phish is almost kind of scary. Like, they weren't a huge fan, but they came to see it and they were like, you audience members have a lot of trust for these guys because you just let them take you places and like, they could just leave you totally like mind fucked and you're not and depressed, but we trust them. We know they're going to take us back to the right place. Yeah. They definitely go all over.
And even in this one performance, they went all over. In 24 minutes, they visited an entire solar system.
Yeah, totally. I love that about Mercury.
There's a really focused part in the beginning. At around 13 minutes, it becomes very ominous and then just turns type 2. There's a part that I like that I call planetarium Phish. Because when I was growing up and going to the Hayden Planetarium at the Natural History Museum on field trips, it was always the kind of music I heard in the background.
The space music?
Yeah, space music. So I called planetarium Phish. There was a lot of it in 2013 also.
So I think another thing about Phish is that, which is why I like outdoor venues, is that I think Phish attracts, if we have extraterrestrial visitors, that they're going to come to the planet to see a Phish show, because where else are they going to get all that crowd energy, all that sound, all that light? I mean, the gorge must be a magnificent shining gem to UFOs. And so I feel like a lot of Phish's music also like tunes into that whole vibe of like space travel and astral planes.
I mean, there's a part in this Mercury toward the end where Trey comes back with the "Don't Worry About Falling" melody, but it's in a different key and it's a different rhythm, but it's still there. There's still a little bit of that cornerstone. And that's, I think, my absolute favorite stuff, when they take something familiar and they present it to you, but in a completely different context and a completely different background. So at the same time, you have something to hold on to, but you're also being thrown into a brand new place. And they bring us all the way back to Earth with Susie Greenberg.
Oh, that was such a good one too. I mean, yeah, I just love when Phish comes out and when Fishman comes out and he's like, rah, 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 whatever about the lyrics. And then the very last time when he's like, still forgetting my name after all these years.
Yeah. How many times has he done that? I'm sure there's some stat nerd out there who knows. But Susan Greenberg was raucous. It was like really up there. And the crowd they cheer, and Trey giggles when he mentions the slot machine lyric. I don't even think he realized that there was the connection, because you could hear him giggle a little bit. And it even has Mercury teases by Trey about a minute and a half in.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out.
It's about a minute and a half.
There's more of the audience singing in that too. Like there's more of the everybody just totally going at it and screaming it out. Yeah. Fantastic set one closer, especially for a set like that.
And here we are at set two. So we closed the first set with Susie Greenberg, and the second set opens with Soul Planet. And yeah, so you're ready to sing along? You want to go?
So imagine you're in that arena. It's hot and sweaty, and you just got hit with that huge first set. So, and then you've been sitting on your ass for like the last 25 minutes until the lights come back on, or lights go back down. So you kind of needed a Soul Planet to kind of shake everybody up a little. All right, let's get back into this. And all right, and then we're going to go into Down with Disease.
And again, it's not my favorite song, but it has had some of my favorite jams in 3.0, without a doubt. Mohegan Sun had a really great Soul Planet, and this one is fabulous. There was this awesome stomping jam 8 minutes in that had a Mutron kind of effect, like that Trey, I think, learned or really perfected during the Fare Thee Well gigs. It really had that almost like 80s, very effects-laden sound that worked perfectly. There was a big soaring section about 12 minutes in. Paige took over at 14 minutes. The crowd, you could hear them respond, and they become part of the song. There's this all-encompassing peak toward the end that just starts the whole set on the right foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great song for that. It's like, we're going to shake you back in. And it also is a little bit of an activation song. Like, some people don't really enjoy it that much, but if you are understanding them trying to speak the message to you, then Soul Planet is where we are. We're all here together on Soul Planet.
And then after a pretty new song of Soul Planet, there's Old Reliable, Down with Disease, that you mentioned, with this talk about resonance.
The bass echo is just off the hook. Oh my God.
Even the recording made my chest vibrate like it does in a show.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the best part of a Phish show, is the vibration going through your body. That's why is as awesome as it is to watch on the television, as great as it is to be able to replay it over and over, being there and feeling it, like having it in your body kinesthetically is.
Yes. And through your toes even. Yeah, really, it's a full body experience. A hallmark of 2018, I think, was changing tempo. Was the band was able to really pace themselves, and in a big venue like this, where there's big boominess, where they have to kind of play a little slower, and that helps them pace themselves. There was a part about 7 minutes in where Trey hands it off to Paige, and they would come around with a melody from In the Summertime, which is really fun. It's 7 minutes. A full-on Oye Como Va jam, like a full pronounced jam. It's just, everything's on the table at this show.
And then it's segue. Oh.
Yeah, it fizzles out and segues into Gaiute, right?
It didn't even feel like fizzle to me. It was more like a because fizzle to me sounds like something's just kind of going out.
There's that connotation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it transformed into it.
Well,
I love Gaiuti because I think that's one of the. I have a theory that actually didn't start with me. It started with this guy Stardog. You may or may not know him, Greg Black.
I'd like to hear more from Stardog. Yeah,
he believes in the whole 2012 Mayan Phish connection and how music is bringing about the change. That's how we became friends. And he talks about how Gaiuti is also Gaiuti is one of the songs about Trey's alien visitation when he was young. I have no idea if any of that's true, but it kind of does feel like a song about aliens coming to visit you.
I think Stardog once tried to sell me some stuff out of a very tightly packed backpack at Jones Beach once, a book actually. So I may have unwittingly met Stardog, but Gaiute, it's not without its flubs, and they're not small flubs, but at this point, who's nitpicking? Who cares? It's just so much fun. The melody of Gaiute is just the most enriching, enlivening part of the Phish canon. Like hearing that big piano overture at the end, and everyone in the world must play air piano during Gaiute, right?
Yes,
I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't. And then the next song, which I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, was one of the reasons you picked this show, was
Hell
Sneakin'
yes,
Sally
it
Through the Alley.
was.
You have the floor. Tell us all about it.
So many years ago, back in 97, I saw the Ominous Sea Pods for the first time, and they played Sneakin' Sally, and I was like, this song fucking rocks. Hope I can say that. And
say whatever you want.
My friend Mark at the time was like, dude, you're kind of like Sneaky Sally, like always kind of sneaking around and shit. And so he gave me that nickname, and then I promptly missed every Sneaky Sally on every tour. We'd be doing a leg, and I'd be like, man, I'm so tired. Like, I gotta go home. I stay in the hotel for this show. I need to catch up. I'm so sleepy. Or something would get canceled and be like, all right, we can't do these last 3 shows. I got to get back to the kid. Or there was one time when I took my daughter to a show. I don't remember which one, but I took her and she was like, nah, I'm done. And then they played it in the second set. So I chased it for 20 years. And then they pulled it out in this 1999 show. I was like, you guys that feeling when they're like, yeah, they're doing this for me. Every fan gets that feeling at least once during the show. And so yeah, that one was for me. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Mike.
And in this version of Sneakin' Sally, Mike is especially assertive. Like his bass, it's like listening to Les Claypool lead Primus in this sense. Like his bass is really front and center on this version. At like around 6.5 minutes, it picks up and everyone joins in on this rhythm that Mike has developed and the crowd goes nuts. My note is, this is why we go.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's why we Phish.
But wait, there's more. Light comes in, which again, I feel similarly about it as Soul Planet, but whatever it takes to get to the best jams, it doesn't matter.
So Light, I feel like is another activation song where some people are like, oh, that's a bathroom song. And that's totally fine. If you're not there for Phish, if you're just there for the fun, absolutely be there, have a great time. But if you're there to like really feel it and learn, then I feel like Light is another one of those tunes. It's like saying, hey, like there's a light inside of you and it's growing now. Like we're pumping into it. We're going to take that light and we're going to bring it out into the world. And it's another thing I love about their music. Yeah. It's modern art. You can interpret it.
Yeah. And it grows on you, or maybe it falls away from you, throughout your career as a career, like any of us is working.
We're career Phish fans. What are you talking about?
You know what? If I got paid the amount of money I've put into it, I could call it a career.
Yeah, seriously.
But every time I think to myself, you know what, I don't love Light, it's irrelevant because there's so many people that it speaks to and that it means everything in the world to them. And that's why the band plays it. That's why I think Trey especially is inspired by it. And when he's inspired, the whole band is inspired. And that's what we all go for anyway.
He found his light. He
very
found
much
his
so.
light in recovery. And he's always had that inside of him. And I don't think he I don't think he had maybe the confidence or something before to just be like okay with like who he is. Like Fishman teasing him in Mexico about that's just how Trey is. He overthinks things. Well,
Yeah.
so do so many of us. Like that's a pretty common theme among fans, at least in the social media world.
And then they close it with the all-time, in my opinion, the all-time best set closer of Slave to the Traffic Light. Where do you stand on Slave? As he pushed the mic in front of her face. Where do you stand?
I love Slave. That song, I love it so much. It's on my car.
Is that right?
Yeah, it just takes you places, right? Like you can get lost in it. It's excuse me. It sometimes feels like it's a type 1 jam, but really a type 2 jam, if that makes sense. Like it's still Slave, but is it Slave?
Destroy the old and introduce the new. And Slave, after the chorus and after I guess the introduction, you could say, of the song, once the jam starts, it's really starting from scratch every time.
Yeah. Well, I'm like they say, it's like, first you're kind of stuck in the traffic and all caught up in there and there's all kinds of things going on in the very beginning. But then we get out into the open, expansive space of just driving down the road and, encountering all different kinds of things, but not right up in your face in the same way.
I noticed even in the very beginning, about 2 minutes in, when they do the See the City, See the Zoo, Fishman even does a little bit of extra work on the hi-hat, which I've never heard him do before. Maybe I don't listen to enough. That's impossible, but it's new to me.
See the city, see the zoo, traffic light moving it through.
And it just spoke to, from Cavern opening the show to Slave closing the second set, there's something a little extra in almost every song of this show. It really speaks to something special. Mm-hmm. And when it closes, it's just like you feel so satisfied when Slave closes a show like this. Like they give you your money's worth and more. Time for the encore, right? So they come out with Hold Your Head Up. By your body language right now, we can't see it, but Elisa is holding her hands up to her face. Her eyes are the size of dinner saucers. Really excited.
They were that night too.
I bet they were for a while after too. We
did every show on the floor that night, and we happened to super luck out that night, and we were like right up, like two from the rail, like right next to Pollock. It was fucking wild night. And I hadn't seen real Fishman antics since 94. Like I hadn't seen since he got naked, right? Like I hadn't seen Fishman be that silly in a while.
You didn't see him tuck it?
Not, not since 94.
Yeah.
So being right there and seeing it, I was like, oh my God, like the whole show just made me feel like I was in my 20s again. It was just totally amazing. I'm like, is he going to undress? Like he was just getting so wild and crazy that I really did think he was just going to take it all off. Like, it's 94 again. Woo!
And then they close the whole thing down with my favorite Led Zeppelin cover that they do. Good times, bad
times. Yeah.
I wrote 3 words. I wrote sick, killer, rocking.
Yeah, it was.
I think that does it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because it really was like, it's, if you're looking back at a show that's like 99, you're kind of looking back at I've had good times and bad times.
But they always dig deep for good times, bad times. I feel like it always sounds how any kid who has his friends over in the basement or the garage to play music, that's how they want to sound in their head. That's how every kid who's ever picked up an electric guitar or drums or bass, whatever you got, and they learn the song by their favorite band and they play it with their eyes closed shut and they're really somewhere else.
Because that song particularly does feel like they're just playing it in the garage.
Yeah. Yeah. For, the greatest rock band alive.
Yeah. But that's one of the things that makes them so awesome is that they feel dressed down, even though they're super tight and so talented, it often just feels like we're just hanging out for them having fun.
Elisa, thank you so much for being here. I had such a blast. This is such a great show to comb over. There's so much there. We didn't even touch on the half of it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I had a great time.
My pleasure. And there you have it, my discussion with Elisa Allechant for November 2nd, 2018 at the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. And throughout our long discussion about that show, let's take a look for our fact check to clear up some of the confusion during the episode. Early in our discussion, Elisa mentions the Union College show in Albany from 1992. That show date is May 17th, 1992, and it has been officially released by Live Phish. It's an amazing show that features antics, tons of teases, secret language signals, and many crowd favorites that today would be considered rarities. Elisa also remembered that the first time she saw Phish in Las Vegas was at the Thomas and Mack. She mentions it happening in 1999, but the show is actually Halloween 1998 when Phish covered the Velvet Underground album Loaded. It was at the Thomas and Mack Center, which is a venue that is not on the Sunset Strip. It's a bit separated from the Las Vegas Strip. Lisa and I also tried to pin down when Mercury debuted, but neither of us could quite remember. Its debut was on July 22nd, 2015 at the Le Schwab Amphitheater in Bend, Oregon. That show also featured the debuts of How Many People Are You?, Heavy Rotation, and Scabbard. And toward the end of today's discussion, I mentioned that Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley returned on December 30th, 1997 after, quote, many years as a dormant song. The actual statistic is that there were 8 years and 921 shows in between performances of Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley. So there you have it. Thank you so much again to Elisa Allechant for being on the show today. And thanks to you for listening to Attendance Bias. I'm Brian Weinstein. I'll see you next time.